If someone were to ask you who is Belange Mutunda, what would you say?
My dad. But as I grew, like when you're like a teenager, you're like trying to find your personality, like trying to find who you are and all these things, you start asking yourself questions and questions. Assistantship, so the fact that I was also teaching students really, really helped me to better my skills. And
How did you get into fashion design?
made two purses for her, and then after that the next week she came out with more money and more clothes. She's like, yeah, my sister loved those purses you made for me, and her much money that I was able to purchase my first sewing machine. So that was the first time that I was really excited, like, okay, this is the fruit of my labor. So that was like how Belange Made started, and like moving to a different country and just like continue growing my company here. So I hope that answered your question. I tried to be short, but
That's really
yeah.
okay. No, that was good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Belange, for sitting here and chatting with me today. I'm super excited to do these interview questions because anytime I get to sit with someone and kind of dive in a little bit more into their story and how they got started, it's super inspiring, super interesting, and to more get to know the person behind the business and the brand. And so thank you today for sitting with me and taking this time to do this interview. I appreciate it.
Thanks to you too. I appreciate you a lot.
So the first question I have for you, Belange, is if someone were to ask you who is Belange Mutunda, what would you say?
This is actually a really tough question to answer. It's just like, tell me about yourself. Okay. The first thing that I like to start with is I'm a curious cat, so I love, love, love learning. So that's actually what brought me into my career in fashion, studying different things but liking different stuff. So I've always been like almost everywhere. So I'm like really, really curious person, but I'm also really like an introvert. So I also like being out there. So I don't know, maybe I'm in between being like extrovert and introvert. So that's where I fall. Maybe I would say maybe I'm creative. I don't know. It depends on how people see me, but
No, that was good. That was good. That was good. I know those questions are super hard sometimes. It's like, what do you want me to technically say? I don't know.
like, okay, I'm not wondering like, do I actually know myself? That's how I see that question. So yeah,
That was good. How did you get into fashion design?
Okay, so that depends on how much time you have because it's a long story. But I'll try
You
my
could
best.
do a short story.
Yeah, I'll try my best to sum it up. I wasn't always like into fashion. Actually, like when I was young, I was like a tomboy. So like fashion wasn't really like my thing. I wasn't like a girly girl. I was just like, okay, some girl. But I liked craft, like making stuff. Like when I was little, I used to break stuff around the house like a lot. So my mom used to get upset. But as I grew, I started like fixing stuff around the house. So I always like making things, crafts here and there. When I was in high school, I was taking my classes for engineering because I wanted to do engineering in college, but I didn't know which like area of engineering exactly to do. But my dad was in engineering, and I always admired my dad. So like, yeah, I want to be like my dad. But as I grew, like when you're like a teenager, you're like trying to find your personality, like trying to find who you are and all these things, you start asking yourself questions and questions until like my senior year in high school, where I'm getting better with crafts and stuff and sewing just a little bit. Like I had dolls, I used to make clothes for my dolls, but I never made clothes for people. So like my senior year in high school, I was like hanging out with my sister. I had a like dress that I got like a second from my secondhand store. I was telling my sister, I'm like, oh, I feel like I want to make a purse. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, like I like this dress. Like the dress was really like just like a grandma dress, like 1990s dress, big shoulder pads and all this thing. I like, I'm just gonna transform it and make it into something like, ooh, how did I do this? Like handmade everything. So when I went to school, one of my classmates, like she liked it. She's like, oh, where did you get this from? Like I made it myself. She didn't believe me because okay, we're like kind of nerdy. Like, how did you do this? I'm like, yeah, I really did it. She's like, okay, you know what? tomorrow I'll bring you some of my like old jeans. I want a purse too. I'm like, oh, no problem. So the next day she brought me jeans, and then she brought me $10. I was really willing to do it for free because she was my friend, a really good friend. I'm like, no, you don't have to pay me. I'll do it for free. She's like, no, this is your job. Like, you deserve to be paid. So that moment, like, it was like ding 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 in my head. I'm like, wait, what? Like, this can be money. I'm like, okay. So she brought me that $10. She brought me like two pair of jeans. I made two purses for her, and then after that, the next week she came back with more money and more clothes. She's like, "Yeah, my sister loved those purses you made for me, and her friends too." So she started bringing me people. Okay, she like Belange. She makes handbags, all these things. So I started getting customers, like high school customers, and then the word eventually got out, and I started getting people from outside of school. So that's what like pretty much how my business started. But at the beginning, I didn't have a name. So I was just like making stuff, selling here and there. Like I really didn't know what I was doing. Like, okay, I was just enjoying what I was doing. And something with me, when I start something, I can get obsessed real quick. So it was like everything around the house, like, okay, this dress, I don't wear it anymore. I'll turn it into a purse. Like everything I wanted to flip, everything. My mom was like, okay, you need to slow down a little bit, like you're going a little bit too fast. But a lot. So at the time my older sister was in China, so we were like talking about what I'm gonna do in college. I'm like, you know what, I feel like I want to study art. I didn't know like fashion design as a thing, because like in my country, like from like African country, you can't really go outside of like medical school or engineering or just like law school. Those are the three main fields where you have to. So I didn't really know anything outside of that. I'm like, okay, I want to go to art school, but I didn't even know the term fashion design. So she's like, oh, okay, you know what, we start doing some research, finding some colleges, and let's see what we can come up with. I feel like I want to study art. My dad looked at me like, wow, like really, girl? After all this time, everything you've been studying, all like, I wasn't a bad student. Like I didn't struggle with what I was doing, but it's just like it wasn't for me. I'm like, okay, you know what? I just don't like it like that. I want it to be like it, but it's just not what I want to do anymore. To do. My mom was the same. At first, my mom was like, okay, you know what? How are you gonna survive? We're in Africa. Like, how are you gonna do it? But then they were like, you know what? If you like it that much, do it. And then I remember what she told my dad. She's like, you know what? Since she wants to do it that bad, let her do it. If she fails, she's not gonna blame it on us. But if you push her to study something that you want her to study, if it didn't work out, then she blame us forever. So just let her do what she wants to do. So it was like, okay, so since you want to do this really, really bad, I'm going to give you a challenge. Like, before you graduate, you have to prove me that you're serious about this business. I'm like, okay, deal. So I started, like, I was selling making mad money for a young girl. I was making mad money. And then I got so much money that I was able to purchase my first sewing machine. So that was the first time that I was really excited, like, okay, this is the fruit of my labor. My dad was like, wow, I'm really proud. You know what? Let's do this. Like, you want to go to fashion school? Let's do this. Like, kind of school, but don't go to a French country. Like, you have to, like, I feel like you like challenges so bad, you have to go to a different country. I didn't want to, and English was like, I was struggling with English, and I didn't even like English like that. It's like, yeah, I was like, I want to go to Paris. It's like, nah, you have to go somewhere else. So my sister helped me on the school in China, in Shanghai, but it was like a big fashion school. But my dad was like, nah, I feel like you should be somewhere else. So that's how I ended up like finding, like, we looked into community colleges here in America, and then we found FIT, but it was really expensive. And like, I'm just starting in this field. I feel like if I went straight to FIT, like, I wouldn't even be admitted in the program because I had no background, no portfolio, like nothing. It's just, okay, this is a passion that I have, and I'm not a fashion person. It's just like a passion for now. One of my cousins recommended that I started in community college instead of going straight to like a big university. So we ended up finding DMAC in Iowa, and then I flew to Iowa. I came here. My thought when I started my design program at DMAC, I thought when I have like actual fashion classes, sewing and all this, because I didn't know the basics. Like, okay, I can make my own pattern blocks if I like deconstruct a garment, but I didn't know how to start like from scratch. So I didn't know that the program was merchandising and mostly like marketing, business, and advertising. A year into the program, like, okay, when is the sewing class coming? When is it coming? I was waiting for the sewing class. And then I went back and read all the classes that I had. No sewing class. So I asked my advisor, I'm like, hey, how come there's no sewing class? She's like, oh, this is merchandising, my dear. Like, it's not fashion. It's like, yeah, it's fashion design, but it's not creative and technical. I'm like, oh my Lord, did I waste my time? But that time I didn't realize that it was a good foundation for my business, because I was running a company. I needed to know the foundation of business, like before even diving into fashion, because you might know how to sew, you might know how to do all these technical skills, but if you don't have the skill to sell what you're doing, you're like, nothing is going to happen. So I was like a little bit disappointed. I'm like, you know what? I guess I have to rely on myself, go out there and learn. I told you again, like, I'm a curious cat. Like, I love learning. So I started watching YouTube videos. I got some books. I was on Pinterest every day, pinning stuff on Pinterest, reading stuff on Google. And that's why I started like sewing, all the like the basics. I started like pattern making was really hard for me, because that one, I think you need an actual like teacher to like teach you all those things. Away from like dressmaking. So I was like, okay, I'm still gonna make accessories and stuff, but moving from my home country to here was a big struggle, because I had to relearn like my target market. I'm in a new area, new people, so I have to network again, get to know people and stuff. So it was a struggle. But the fact that I was taking those business classes, like speech classes, it helped me go out there and network. So I had to get out of my comfort zone to go and meet people like, hey, I have this business, I need to know people so I can put my business out there. So I like at the end, I was really grateful that I started in merchandising and in a small community college, because it was like a small size class, and I got to like really interact with the professor, like in person conversation, and it really helped me. So after that, I graduated in 2018. So I already knew how to sew and all these things. So the summer between like graduating from DMAC and me starting at Iowa State, I was scouted for Fashion Week. So I did my first fashion show in Omaha. So that was my first time showcasing my clothes. So I was like, oh, I like this. So after that, I switched completely to garment, like dressmaking, and I stopped doing accessories for a while because my accessories were just not selling. But the clothes were doing well because I was doing custom clothing. So I started doing clothes and slowly started back again with accessories and stuff. So like those 2 years at DMAC, I took time to learn like pattern making by myself, like as much as I could, like draping, all the technical skills. So I didn't struggle too much at Iowa State. I'm not, because I already had like a really solid foundation from YouTube University. So it went really well. So my helped me like better myself was when I started teaching assistantship. So the fact that I was also teaching students really helped me to better my skills. And the problem, the only stressful part was that I was a full-time student, and then I have to teach, and then I have to run my business, then I have to be a person, I have to be a daughter, girlfriend, and all these things, a sibling. So that was the thing that was really hard for me. But so that was like how Belange Handmade started, and like moving to a different country and just like continue growing my company here. So I hope that answered your question. I tried to be short, but
that's really okay. Yeah. No, that was good. Thank you so much. That's an incredible story.